This is Conversations on Careers and Professional Life, a podcast from the Foster School of Business, MBA Career Management Office. I'm your host, Gregory Heller. On each episode, I talk with guests from faculty and staff to students, alumni, and business leaders about the skills and strategies that can help you design a professional career that you're happy with. My guest today is Varun Puri. Varun is the co-founder of Yoodli.ai. Yoodli is a AI-powered speech coach that I've been using with students at the Foster School since it came out of stealth mode. I'm really excited to have Varun on to talk about the product, to talk about how people are using it, and to talk about where it might be going. Varun Puri, welcome to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life.
Gregory, thank you for having me here. It is an honor to be on this podcast with you. I've also got to say it's wonderful to be chatting with you out of all people about Yoodli. You were our first user, our first coach. You've single-handedly brought thousands of people onto Yoodli. So we owe a lot of what we've built at Yoodli to you.
Well, I can be pretty demanding, so thank you for putting up with me in those early days and right up until today.
That is true. Actually, for all of your listeners, not only is Gregory demanding, Gregory would send me messages from ski slopes saying, "Hey, Varun, I'm using this sensor in my ski boot and it gives me metrics like these. Why doesn't Yoodli do the same thing?" And then we would have to go and build them out.
Yes, always looking for inspiration from unlikely places. Before we talk about the product, I'd like to hear a little bit about your path to becoming a founder of a software startup. So why don't you tell us, what were you doing before Yoodli? How'd you get there? And then how'd this idea come about?
For sure. I'll give you my quick life story and you can poke in whatever point might be interesting. I'm Varun. I grew up in India. I came to the US for college, went to a very small liberal arts college in Southern California for my undergrad. From there, I joined Google in one of these early grad rotational programs doing marketing stuff. I got tapped by Sergey Brin, who's one of the founders of Google, to run special projects for him. It was a super fun job, essentially to be Sergey's fixer. I did that for 2 years. I was then a product manager at Google X, where they work on a lot of early stage cutting edge technology. So things like the self-driving cars, robots, drones, etc. I was an early employee on a project where we were using invisible lasers to bring internet to rural India and rural Africa. I lived in sub-Saharan Africa for a bit. I was loving life at Google, but I've been very passionate about this idea. And I decided to take a leap of faith a little over a year and a half ago, and I'm still figuring out whether it's worth it or not.
So tell us about the idea. Where did the idea come from? And then tell us how you got set up, where you are now to bring this product actually to market.
Yep. Simple concept behind Yoodli is think of Yoodli as Grammarly for speech. Yoodli is an AI-powered speech coach that provides you private, real-time, and judgment-free feedback on your speaking skills. This is anytime you're speaking. During a job interview, Yoodli might tell you, "Varun, slow down," or "make eye contact," or "remember to hit point number 3." As I'm practicing for an upcoming presentation, Yoodli might tell me, "Varun, slide number 6 didn't make that much sense. Why don't you focus on slide number 7 instead?" Yoodli is like a smart mirror. We've all been there the night before a presentation or an interview as we talk out loud to a mirror, a camera, a spouse, a stopwatch. The best way to improve is to practice, and Yoodli enables that and makes that a little bit more seamless using AI.
Absolutely. I mean, I've talked with many students who've done that, the practicing in front of the mirror or recording themselves. So let's talk a little bit about the tools within Yoodli that make it better than just listening to a recording of yourself.
Yeah, I think of Yoodli as essentially bringing data to the world of communication coaching. Far too often, when we look at ourselves back on camera, we'll say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I had a pimple. I sound like this. I hate the look of my face, my voice, etc." But when you think about sports as an example, Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't look at his highlight reel and say, "Oh my God, coach, my hairstyle got spoiled." He's likely saying, "At minute 45, the angle on my free kick was wrong. And that's what we're trying to do with speaking. So we will give you targeted insights across different parts of your speech, and hopefully that motivates you to practice a little bit more. Fun fact, by the way, I'm using Yoodli on this call, and I just got a few alerts saying, Varun, try speaking a little more slowly. And I was like, yes, I talk way too quickly.
I'm using it as well, and I have slowed down considerably from my days as a New Yorker. But when I get excited, I still do pick up the pace a bit. And I've seen as I've put recordings of presentations I've done into Udly for analysis that when I'm in front of an audience, I typically get faster. And as my allotted time begins to come closer to expiration, I get faster still. So it's something that has helped me look at and post game, to continue your analogy, to post game my performance in presentations as well as I've prepared for presentations to help me with that speed. So we've got pace is one thing that's really important, and I know a lot of the students I've worked with have used it for that. There's some other metrics that you talked about, like smiling or eye contact, which in the case of doing a online virtual interview over something like Zoom is helpful. And then what are some of the other aspects that really get into what you're saying?
Yep. Actually, zooming out a little bit, Udly's feedback has three components to it. The first is feedback on your delivery, your eye contact, body language, tone, pitch, intonation, word choice. Are you using filler words, non inclusive language? As you can tell, I've started talking a lot more slowly and deliberately because of my Udly alerts. Are you monologuing? Are you rambling? So that's delivery. The second piece is feedback on your content. You can be the most charismatic person in the world, but if you're not saying something substantive, Udly will point that out. Varun, here are opportunities for you to rephrase what you said or be more concise in your elevator pitch. This is under the coach comment section on Udly. And the third, and arguably the most important part of Udly, is the peer to peer collaboration. I'm a big believer that AI can help, but it will only get us from a 0 to a 6, or it can help us practice on our own. The essence of speaking is about the human subjectiveness and the nuance. And what Udly enables is for me to share my speech or interview with a peer or a mentor such as yourself, Gregory, and for you to asynchronously critique me for me to improve. So, feedback on delivery, on content, and human to human collaboration is what makes this special.
Let's talk about that content piece because we're recording this here in early June of 2023. Obviously, ChatGPT is all the rage. Bard is out of the is out in the wild now, and there are many other LLM powered tools that are emerging and probably will emerge. Are you using one of these models in the background to analyze what a user says and to rephrase it?
Yes. Think of Udly as something like ChatGPT, customized towards the public speaking and speech coaching experience. So we use large language models, but we're building our own bespoke model on top of that that gives you highly customized and personalized feedback. So, for instance, in my case, I'm a founder. I'm very insecure of the way I communicate. I've got to sound smart, especially when I'm talking to investors. And I get nervous. When I get nervous, I start talking too quickly. Udly has now learned from my behaviors and gives me tailored feedback to me. To summarize that, Udly is essentially a customized version of ChatGPT that's my private speech coach, and you'll have your own version of it.
So let's take another step back and talk about the business itself. You are part of an incubator. Just hum a few bars about the incubator that where you're housed.
Yep. So we're located at the Allen AI Institute. Paul Allen was one of the co-founders of Microsoft. They have an incubator where they get 5 or 7 companies a year and help bring them to reality. The AI2 incubator is phenomenal for anyone thinking about startup land. We've also raised some money from several leading investors, such as Madrona, the first folks behind Amazon, a few folks in the Bay Area, leading speech coaches, etc. We've raised a little over $7 million to date and are now trying to make this dream a reality. But Gregory, you know how hard it is.
Yeah, it's a challenge. But I've seen the power of this tool to help students, in particular non-native English speakers, to help them improve with their delivery and to give them a way to practice. And the thing that I always say, and I think you alluded to this a little bit, people don't like listening to recordings of their own voice. They don't like watching videos of themselves for the most part. But with Yoodli, I tell people all you have to do is look at the metrics and read the transcript of what you said. You don't ever have to watch the video. And that makes it even less threatening of an exercise than the best alternative before Yoodli existed, which was whipping out your iPhone and recording yourself.
Absolutely. Or cringing as you looked at yourself in the bathroom mirror. My underlying philosophy behind Yoodli is we are not an AI company. We are not a communications company. We're a confidence company. It doesn't matter if you have filler words or talk quickly or slowly. If you back yourself while speaking, that's the only thing that matters. And the way to back yourself is to be more aware of the way you communicate.
As the product has been out in the wild and people have been using it, what kind of feedback have you received from users other than me? Because I know what I've told you, but what are you hearing from others?
It's been overwhelming, to be honest. We're still in our earliest days, but Toastmasters International, for instance, is rolling out Udly to 300,000 members worldwide. Or most major business schools have been using Udly as part of their career services offices. We have folks using Udly in Qatar, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in France. It's really exciting to see it become a reality. The kinds of feedback we've got are people calling Yoodli Grammarly for speech, or Duolingo for speech coaching, or Strava or Apple Health for speech, which has been exciting. We've had requests from folks saying, look, I love Yoodli and I love the idea behind it, but I hate practicing. It's just too much work. Is there a way that Yoodli could always be by my side anytime I'm speaking? Which is why we've now built this everyday communication coach that gives me feedback in the moment. It's currently telling me I've been speaking for 61% of this conversation. I'm guessing that's good because it's a podcast and I'm supposed to speak a little
Yeah,
more.
you're the guest.
But still, like 80% would be bad. So I'm mindful of that. And then at the end of the week, Yoodli gives me meaningful insights about the way I communicate. Like, Varun, you were way more nervous when talking to Gregory versus when talking to Bob. Or in your Sequoia meeting, you ended up messing up your pitch a lot more than you did in your Madrona meeting. You interrupted women more than men this week. Overall feedback from users has been really exciting and positive, but users want to find more and more ways of embedding Udly into their everyday lives as opposed to having to practice. And that's what we're now trying to do.
So this new feature that you're alluding to is an app that you install on your computer and you launch it and turn it on when you're on any type of call, and it only listens to you, nobody else on the call. And like I'm watching it right now because I've got it here. My talk time is in the 30-something% range. And if I start speaking too quickly, it's going to give me an alert. If I'm talking too much or for too long, it's going to give me an alert. So this is a way that people can use or benefit from Yoodli. And then after the call, you see those metrics. People can benefit from it without sitting down to say, well, I'm going to practice now. Now's the time I'm going to practice talking. Because a lot of people might not have a presentation or an interview that they're practicing for. They just want to improve the way they communicate in meetings.
Absolutely. I take inspiration from a lot of the fitness apps. Apple Health is a good example. Apple tells me, or my Apple Watch tells me, Varun, it's okay if you didn't go to the gym today. But anytime you're walking, you're exercising. And let's help you close your rings so you at least get progress on your fitness. And we're trying to do the same thing with speaking, which is, Varun, you have an upcoming presentation, great, go and practice. But speaking is an everyday muscle. Anytime you're speaking, let's give you analytics to help you improve. And let's make that experience really seamless for you. So that, Varun, you don't even need to remember to turn on Udly. Just connect your calendar to Udly, and anytime you have a call, Udly will pop up and start giving you feedback, like the feedback I just got, to slow down or make eye contact. I keep getting slowed down because I talk way too quickly.
Yeah. So there's the the actual practice. So that could be for an interview, and you've got a whole question bank. And Yoodli will actually ask follow-up questions now, which is, I think, really cool, because it's one thing to prepare for a question you know you're going to get to prepare your answer. It's another to get a spontaneous follow-up question and then have to respond to it. So that's a great new feature. There's the app that's going to just track what I'm saying and how I'm speaking when I'm on a variety of types of calls or meetings. And then there's the games, right? So talk a little bit about the games and the attempt to sort of make this fun. I know I've had fun with them.
It's a really fun experiment. A lot of people ask me where I'm trying to take it. Look, at the core, I believe I would have succeeded with Yoodli if I'm able to take this massive insecurity that people have. 2 out of 3 people in the world are afraid of public speaking. How do I take that into something that's fun and light and playful that college kids play as a drinking game? Of course, that's not my business model, but if we're able to do that, we're able to demystify something that's so scary. And I've now been working with thousands of improv and speech coaches around the world. And their pro tip is speaking is fun. Let's play some fun improv games, right? Put you on the spot and give you a random topic and get you to speak. Toastmasters has this. It's called table topics in group meetings. You're put on the spot, you're given a topic, you've just got to go without thinking. And unfortunately, that's how everyday life is. When we think of someone who's extremely charming, it's because they're quick on their feet. The idea behind these AI powered games is come and speak in a judgment free environment, but the goal is speak before you think. You don't need to be perfect in what you say, just have a good time with it and be willing to riff off the fly, as an example. Riff
Yeah,
on the fly.
on the fly.
Hey, I'm not from this country. English is the language.
It's
I
great.
can get away with it.
Yeah. So the game that I like the best is Spin a Yarn. Metaphor Mania just kills me every time. I cannot do the Metaphor Mania. So folks out there should hop on to Yoodli.ai and play one of these games, or try recording a small speech, or if you're practicing for an interview, you can check it out. Are there any lessons that you have from your experience so far building this company that you think are applicable to a student who's trying to pitch themselves for an internship at a tech company? Like, from your experience, and you worked at Google. A lot of people want to work at Google. I don't want to go back to, like, you were an undergrad, you got this post graduation opportunity and you ran with it. That's fantastic. But now, when you look back, what are some of the lessons that you might have from the last couple of years?
It's a really good question. And I don't want to give you one of those cheesy follow your dream type
Yeah.
answers. I'll give you really.
There's a lot of news. I've seen a couple of headlines like, that's the worst advice.
Oh, really?
Don't follow it. Yeah, it's been making the rounds, especially because it's graduation season, that, like, this is probably the best advice, the worst advice to try and follow.
I'll give you a tactical example of something I'm learning at Yoodli that I still haven't implemented well, but I wish I could now, and I would tell my former self this as well. I'm really passionate about this idea. Hopefully that comes through. I hope we can make a lot of money, but what gets me out of bed is, can I help kids in India speak with confidence, and can I get billions of people to do this? And in doing so, I'm targeting a really deep rooted problem of human communication. We don't know if it can be quantified. We don't know if there's a solution. Everyone has different speaking patterns. I don't want to build robots, but this is so broadly applicable. What that means is everyone and their cousin has advice for me. I meet so many armchair product managers on a day to day basis. This could be an investor who's invested in Uber and is like, Varun, you should sell this to sales teams, all the way to somebody who's used the tool for 15 seconds and then says, Varun, Yoodli should give feedback on UpTalk, or somebody else who says, why don't you just plug this into Zoom? And I think those ideas are helpful, but ideas in abstract mean so little, but they can be really overwhelming, and it's hard to filter out the noise from progress. My approach is, look, I'm building this based on intuition and a little bit of data, but mostly intuition. I know what I'm really passionate about, and I'm just going to go ahead and build it and be able to put the advice to the side. I wish I could do this in undergrad. In undergrad, anytime I would have the chance to speak to anybody, even moderately successful, I would run and ask them, "What would you do in my shoes?" And they would give me their wisdom. The truth is, their experience is so different from mine. And I've got to run with mine on my own and at least have a better filter to identify whose feedback to take. So, on Yoodli, as an example, I have lots of people emailing me every day. Oh, wow, I've been speaking for over a minute on this monologue. I should stop. I have lots of people emailing me every day saying, "Varun, it would be cool if you did this and you did that." My approach now is, hey, go use the tool 20 times, struggle with it, build a perspective on how this actually integrates into your workflow, and then let's talk. And it's really helped me out because I'm speaking to folks who actually care rather than someone who's a fly-by entrepreneur. That monologue alert was very helpful. Huh.
So I think that is actually a fantastic piece of advice, and we often tell that to students when they're circulating their resume and they're getting advice from different people about how they should rewrite their resume. For example, we say, this is your document, you own it, you have to be comfortable with it, and you can take people's feedback, but you need to decide how to implement that feedback. And I think you're right when it comes to telling your story, when it comes to public speaking. There are some truths that maybe hold across many different people and contexts, but ultimately, the person who is speaking needs to feel comfortable. And you said it, you called it confidence. People need to feel confident, and I think a lot of that confidence does come from comfort. And I think what Udly can do for people is give them the exposure therapy, if you will, of having to be on the spot, of watching that clock, of thinking on their feet when playing some of those games or getting a follow-up question in a way that's low risk and lower pressure than being in the boardroom meeting or in the job interview.
Totally. I mean, there are so many things keeping me up at night. I'll give you an example. People often say, "Well, Varun, where is your focus? You've built this interview prep tool and you've built this speech presentation tool, and now you're building this everyday communication coaching tool. You're a startup. You've got to just do one thing and do it really well." And it's great advice. I often ask myself, am I all over the place? My intuition is, if I'm to build this really well, it has to be ubiquitous. Grammarly is helpful because it's there when I'm on my Google keyboard, when I'm typing an essay, when I'm on my dating apps. That's what makes it so ubiquitous. And for Udly to be successful, we've got to be anywhere you speak. It's a really hard trade off to make, though.
Yeah. Well, it can't be the thing that you only use when you're preparing for an interview, because that's something that, people do episodically. They might be preparing for interviews and then they go 18 months, 2 years, 3 years without any more interviews. And there's still opportunity to improve the way that they speak and present.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Udly. You know that. And anyone who's met with me in my office knows I'll use Udly on a Zoom call when I'm meeting with students, and I'll recommend that students use it. I guess my last question for you is, it seems like a natural for students. It seems like a natural for a job seeker. How do you think about that mid-career professional, and what would you say to that mid-career professional to convince them that they should try this out?
It's a great question. In fact, I think our bullseye users are mid-career professionals, not students. I mean, ideally, there's applicability across the board, but the folks I've heard from are a level 5 engineer who's stuck at Google, a non-native English speaker who's gotten a couple promotions, but their managers now said, "You've got to be a leader. You've got to sound confident in meetings," which essentially means play the game and do the whole speech coaching horse and pony show. And they are stuck because there's no clear formula there. Udly is most beneficial to them because it helps them be more aware of how they're communicating. Are they monologuing? Are they interrupting others? Are they asking open ended questions? And by just getting aware of this, they will likely be more confident the next time they're in team meetings to get their promotion. So I'm hoping, Gregory, if this works out, I'll sound very smart. If it doesn't, I look like a total idiot. But let me get someone like Gregory at Foster MBA to love Yoodli and use it, to get all of his students using it, his business school students, and get their interviews, get their jobs through Yoodli, but then take Yoodli with them into McKinsey and Accenture and Google and wherever they work. And hopefully that's when we can have a lasting impact on their lives.
Well, I think it's a grand vision. I fully support it. Thank you so much for taking the time, Varun, to have this conversation on careers and professional life.
Gregory, thank you for all that you're doing, for all your help to me as well as to the broader Seattle community.
Since recording this conversation, Yoodli has introduced some new features to their desktop app, including live coaching and talking points. This is a great tool to use while you're on conversations with other people without them knowing that you're using Yoodli. Yoodli has also introduced pricing, so after your first 10 free recordings, you will need to subscribe to continue using the product. Listeners of the podcast can use the code Gregory20 to get 20% off your subscription. At the current pricing, with or without the discount, I think the value that Yoodli can provide to anyone looking to improve their presentation skills, public speaking, or practice interviews is well worth the price. Thank you for listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or classmate. Help others find the show by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Conversations on Careers and Professional Life is produced by me, Gregory Heller, with support from the Foster School of Business, Office of MBA Career Management. Learn more about the show, find show notes and past episodes, and get in touch with me at conversationsoncareers.com.